Okay, sampling normal distributions. That's what we're talking about today. And I think that this is best illustrated through an example problem. So we're going to go just dive right in. So I want you to imagine all of the peaches in the world, just a gigantic pile of peaches, just a huge old pile of peaches. Somehow we have discovered that the average size of a peach, the mean, is 175 grams. And the standard deviation is 5 grams, which of course means that the variance is 25. There are all kinds of reasons why we might reasonably think that this could be normally distributed, right? There's going to be a couple of really big peaches, a couple of really small peaches, but most of them are going to kind of hover around the center here. Okay, so the idea here is if I just get a random peach, I get one from over here, or over here, or over here, or over here, I could get any type of peach. But when we're talking about sampling here, what if I took a dozen peaches? What would happen to that dozen set of peaches that I've got? Really, so if we have groups of 12 peaches, now we're going to see how does the x bar, and by this e of x, that's the expected value, that is the same thing as the mean in this case. The mean and the expected value of the peach, right? I pick a regular peach. What's the expected value of that peach? It's going to be the mean. But x bar is now when we're dealing with groups of peaches. So the average weight of my dozen peaches, what's going to happen? It's going to still stick pretty much right at that 175, right? I've pulled 12 random peaches from my peach pile. Presumably, those will have a very close mean to this. But here's the trick, is that what about the variance of that group, right? Here they're very spread out. I could get a really tiny peach, but it's not very likely. I could get a really big peach, but it's not very likely. But what if I'm now looking at the variance of that group of peaches? So now I've got, a bag of a dozen peaches sitting in front of me, and then I have 50 bags of those dozen peaches sitting in front of me. What happens there? And really, what you'll find happens is you end up getting a normal distribution of those groups that is much higher here. It's going to have the same mean, but the deviation is going to be a lot less. And that's because when we're talking about how spread apart is the average of that group of a dozen, you've kind of got that dozen to help mitigate the idea of if you have a really tiny one or a really big one. So what you end up doing is you end up using this formula. By formula, I guess I mean just these. The mean you would expect to be exactly the same mean. So when I say mu here, this mu and this mu are identical. They mean exactly the same thing. The variance, however, is going to shrink, and it's going to shrink by a multiplier of 1 over n. So if you have a group of 12, n would be 12. If you grab a group of 50 peaches, this would be 50. So this variance right here and this variance are exactly the same thing. It's just that you would calculate this. So if you wanted to get the standard deviation of the group, then you would take the square root of the variance divided by n. So to be very clear, if I had this group of 12 peaches, then my expected value of the weight of those peaches would be that it would be 175 because it is equal to this right here. And then the variance, so how spread out is this going to be? I would take my original variance, which is 25. I would divide it by 12 because I have 12 peaches, that's my n. And this would be my variance. The standard deviation of that sample would be the square root of 25 over 12. So that would look like this. So here was our original, just all of the peaches in the world. And then when I start grouping them in groups of 12 and I start averaging stuff again, I'm going to keep that exact same mean right there. But notice my spread is a lot less spread because it's unlikely that my group of 12 peaches is all a bunch of really tiny peaches or that it's all a bunch of really big peaches. It's very unlikely. chances are in my group of 12, I'm going to have a bunch of medium-sized peaches. Maybe I have one of these little tiny ones over here, but that's probably going to get averaged. So on average, you're going to get a total weight that is closer to the average, if that makes sense. Let me know what questions y'all have.